Elena Price had worked at Cascade Courier for just over a year when she vanished. To her co-workers, she was known as someone who always showed up on time, no complaints, and didn't mind being assigned routes others avoided: steep hills, tight alleys, late afternoon deliveries. She had a habit of humming to herself while locking up her bike, earbuds in, even on rainy Seattle days when most people just wanted to get home. On April 12th, Elena clocked in at 9 a.m. sharp, just like every other Thursday. It was a normal shift, logged with 9 scheduled deliveries across Seattle, most in the downtown and West Seattle neighborhoods. She wore her usual gear: Cascade Courier uniform shirt, messenger-style delivery bag, helmet, and the small delivery scanner clipped to her belt. Her bike, a silver hybrid with reflective tape on the frame, was tuned up the week before. By 4 p.m. she had completed 8 of the 9 deliveries. At 4:22 p.m. Elena sent a brief text to her dispatcher: "On my way to last stop. Should be back by 6. It was the last message anyone received from her. Her final scheduled delivery was to a residential address on the edge of West Seattle, near a quiet, tree-lined street that backed up to a patch of overgrown private land. The package was a small padded envelope, routine drop-off, nothing flagged as unusual. But by 6:15 p.m., Elena hadn't returned to the office. The dispatcher, assuming she'd hit traffic or stopped for food, didn't report it immediately. It wasn't until 8:30 p.m. when her bike was found abandoned, locked to a short metal fence 3 blocks from the delivery address, that concern turned into panic. Elena's roommate, Jenna Lee, had already called her phone several times by then. No answer. That wasn't like her. "She always texted me when she got off shift," Jenna later told police, "even if it was just 'home soon' or 'want anything?' But that night, nothing." By 10 p.m., Cascade Courier notified police. Officers visited the last known delivery location. No one answered the door. The property, partially obscured by trees and thick hedges, looked vacant. There was no sign of Elena, her courier bag, or the package she was supposed to deliver. The next morning, police searched the area. They found her bicycle, still locked, untouched. Her helmet wasn't with it. A nearby neighbor had seen Elena ride past around 4:30 p.m., but no one reported seeing her afterward. No surveillance cameras covered the spot where her bike was found. The property owner of the final delivery address was listed as David Lorne, a man in his 50s, who, according to records, hadn't lived at the property full-time for over a year. He rented it to temporary tenants, though no current lease was on file. Repeated calls to Lorne went unanswered. Police left a notice on the door, then secured the area with tape. As the days passed, no new leads emerged. Elena's phone was never recovered. The last GPS ping placed her near the delivery location, just minutes after her final message to the dispatcher. Her courier bag was missing. So was the package, though Cascade Courier could only confirm it was a standard parcel. The sender was a small business, which provided no helpful details beyond a tracking number. "We thought maybe she got hurt," her supervisor Mark Dunleavy said. "Maybe hit by a car, wandered off, but it just didn't add up." No accidents were reported in the area that evening. No witnesses came forward. Elena Price had vanished. Her parents flew in from Spokane the next day, devastated. Her mother clutched a printed photo of Elena in her courier uniform, smiling next to her bike. "She loved this city," her mother told reporters. "She wouldn't just leave." Friends organized search parties, canvassing parks, trails, and alleyways near West Seattle. Flyers were stapled to poles, shared on social media. "Missing, Elena Price, last seen April 12th. The community response was immediate. People were scared. If a delivery girl could vanish in broad daylight without a trace, who else was at risk? For weeks, police received hundreds of tips. None led to Elena. Rumors spread that she'd been attacked, kidnapped, maybe even targeted by someone she delivered to, but there was no proof. Her parents stayed in Seattle, waiting, hoping. Every day felt longer than the last. 2 months passed. Then, on a damp June morning, a property maintenance worker named Luis Ortega was sent to clear overgrown brush behind an old garden shed at a rental property, 3 blocks from Elena's last delivery stop. Behind the shed door, locked but slightly ajar, Luis found something. A Cascade Courier bag covered in dust. The shed stood at the far end of the overgrown backyard, partially hidden behind thick shrubs and an old wooden fence that leaned slightly with age. It hadn't been used in years. Luis Ortega, the property maintenance worker, had nearly skipped it, until he noticed the door wasn't latched properly. He tugged at the handle. It creaked open, revealing musty air and cobwebs. Then he saw it. A dust-covered messenger bag slouched in the corner near an old rake. Luis recognized the logo instantly. Cascade Courier. Bold lettering stitched across the side. His stomach dropped. He stepped back and called his supervisor, who immediately called police. By early afternoon, Detective Jamie Rivas, who had been working Elena Price's case since day one, stood at the edge of the yard, staring at the weather-worn shed. A blue tarp now covered the entrance. Crime scene tape flapped in the wind. Rivas looked over at Luis. "You didn't touch it?" "No," Luis said, still pale. "Just saw the bag and called it in." "Good," Rivas nodded. Inside, forensic techs photographed the scene, carefully collecting the courier bag and everything around it. The bag was sealed, but the outside was smudged with dirt and mildew, as if it had been placed there weeks ago, not just recently. The shed itself was locked from the outside, with a rusted padlock hanging from the latch. But the latch was bent, like it had been forced open at some point, then closed again without relocking. Rivas made a note. Who had access to this shed? The bag was taken to the police station for analysis. Inside, investigators found delivery scanner, cracked screen, last scan incomplete, small padded envelope, still sealed, addressed to Brian K. Harwell, same name on Elena's final delivery manifest. Cascade Courier ID badge, Elena's photo, still clipped inside, bike helmet, stuffed at the bottom, scratched. No blood, no obvious damage. But the package proved it. Elena never completed the delivery. She made it to this location, then disappeared. Detective Rivas contacted Cascade Courier for details. "Brian Harwell," the dispatcher said. "That was her last stop." "Who is he?" "Customer we've used before. Lives just off Delridge Way, near where Elena's bike was found." Rivas pulled up the address. It was next door to the shed. The property was vacant, according to city records. Harwell had moved out 3 months prior. Now Rivas had 2 questions. Why was the package never delivered? How did Elena's bag end up behind a locked shed on the property next door? She sent officers to the Harwell residence, but it was still vacant. The real estate agency confirmed it was in transition, between tenants. No alarms had been tripped. No one had reported activity. Neighbors were interviewed. One, a retired man named Gary Mendez, recalled seeing Elena's bike parked near the fence on April 12th. "I saw her walking up the driveway, package in hand," Gary said. "Didn't see her leave." He assumed she left through the back. Maybe took a shortcut. Back at the station, forensics reviewed Elena's delivery scanner. The last activity was logged at 4:31 p.m. when the device was turned on, but no scan was completed. GPS data placed it within 100 feet of the Harwell property. Then the device went dark. Her phone signal had also gone offline around that time. It was as if someone intentionally disabled them and moved her belongings. Detective Rivas returned to the shed site, this time with property records. The shed belonged to the adjacent rental property owned by a man named Victor Lane, who lived out of state. Rivas contacted him. "I haven't been to that property in months," Lane said over the phone. "I hire local maintenance. No one's authorized to store anything there." "No tenants?" "Not currently. Last renter moved out 6 weeks ago." Rivas asked for tenant records. Lane provided them. One name stood out: Brian Harwell. The pieces clicked. Harwell had previously rented the adjacent property where the shed was located and also lived at the final delivery address on Elena's manifest. He'd vacated both properties shortly after Elena's disappearance. Rivas now had a connection and a suspect. She ordered a search warrant for both properties and an APB for Harwell. 2 months of silence had been broken by a forgotten bag in a locked shed. And now, for the first time, police had a name, a place, and a chance to bring Elena home. By the next morning, a search warrant was in hand, and Detective Jamie Rivas stood on the front steps of the vacant Harwell residence, the house where Elena Price had been scheduled to deliver her final package. The home looked untouched, the yard overgrown, a stack of flyers still stuffed into the mailbox, including one with Elena's missing person photo on it. Police forced the front door open just after 9 a.m. The air inside was musty, stale from weeks of disuse. Furniture was gone, but there were boxes stacked in the living room, and a folding chair sat alone near the window. Rivas walked slowly through the house. Something felt off. In the kitchen, a half-used roll of duct tape sat on the counter next to a black cloth bag. Inside the bag, officers found latex gloves and a small flashlight. Nothing illegal, but unsettling. They moved to the garage. The overhead light flickered on, revealing stained concrete, scuff marks, and what looked like a strap bolted to the wall, possibly from a bike mount or something similar. Near the back wall, forensic techs found 2 long strands of hair, brown, consistent with Elena's. Rivas crouched beside the marks on the floor. "Someone was here," she muttered. In a hall closet, police found a burner phone, powered off and taped behind a loose wall panel. It had no SIM card, but techs believed it was used during the period after Elena's disappearance. A search of Brian Harwell's name pulled up no recent employment, but his driver's license address matched the property. Utility records showed power was turned off 2 weeks after Elena vanished, requested by Harwell himself. Rivas now believed he had deliberately cleared out. By noon, officers searched the adjacent property, where the shed was located and where Harwell had also lived prior. In the basement, they found old receipts, one for a storage unit rented under a fake name, John Keller. The unit was located 10 miles south, near Renton. With urgency, Rivas and her team drove to the facility. The manager, after verifying the warrant, escorted them to unit number 427. When the door rolled open, a wave of cold air escaped. Inside, stacked carefully along one wall, were dozens of small boxes, each labeled with dates and addresses. Among them, Rivas found a box marked April 12th, W. Seattle, 4:30 p.m. Inside, a Cascade Courier invoice, printed and folded, and a small notepad containing Elena's name scribbled multiple times. Her heart sank. In a plastic bin, police recovered personnel items, what looked like bracelets, ID cards, and small trinkets. Some were women's jewelry, none linked to Elena, yet. Rivas realized this wasn't the first time. Harwell had been collecting items, possibly from other women, though no prior cases had connected him before. The case now had a new direction. It wasn't just about Elena, it was about Harwell, and who he really was. Rivas issued a statewide BOLO, be on the lookout, for Brian Harwell, 54, last seen April 13th, driving a gray 1998 pickup truck. He had no known family in Washington, but credit card records showed a gas purchase 2 weeks earlier in Spokane, possibly heading east. Elena's parents, still in Seattle, were briefed on the search. Her mother clutched her photo. "Is she still alive?" Rivas hesitated. "We're doing everything we can." Meanwhile, a forensic team worked overnight to process the shed, bike, and courier bag for DNA and trace evidence. One discovery stood out: partial fingerprints on the delivery scanner and a palm print on the inside of the bag flap. All matched Brian Harwell. Public pressure mounted. News outlets ran headlines: "New lead in courier disappearance. Police search for person of interest." Harwell's face was everywhere. Detective Rivas stood back in her office, staring at a board filled with maps, timelines, and a single photo of Elena, smiling in her courier uniform. "She trusted the job," Rivas whispered. "She followed the rules. And someone had used that trust to make her disappear." For 2 months, Brian Harwell had been just another name, one of thousands of customers listed in Cascade Courier's system. Now, he was the only name that mattered. Detective Jamie Rivas stood in the evidence room, reviewing items pulled from Harwell's storage unit. The plastic bin full of trinkets sat open before her, a tangle of watches, cheap bracelets, scratched keychains, and old driver's licenses. Some of the names weren't in any system, others matched missing persons reports dating back 10 years. Women no one had connected to Harwell, until now. Rivas's chest tightened. How long has he been doing this? She pulled on gloves and sifted carefully through the items. Beneath a layer of yellowed receipts, she found a small notebook, the cover faded, corners bent. Inside were addresses, dates, and short notes. March 5th. Drop, rain, easy. April 12th. Elena P. Final stop. That was her. Below that, a single note. Check cabin. Supplies stored. Rivas froze. Later that evening, a forensics tech returned with new findings. Detective, we recovered a folded map from the bottom of one of Harwell's boxes. Hand-drawn markings. Rivas examined the map. It showed a rough sketch of a wooded area southeast of Seattle, near Tiger Mountain, with a red X marked on a trail labeled Old Mill Road. There were initials next to the X. EP. Elena Price, Rivas said, breath catching. At 5:40 a.m. the next morning, a team of search and rescue officers, accompanied by police and K-9 units, began sweeping Tiger Mountain Forest, following the map. The area was dense, steep trails, overgrown brush, and abandoned logging roads. By mid-morning, officers located a small hunting cabin, run down, with boarded windows and a rusted tin roof. The door was locked. No response from inside. Police forced entry. The cabin was empty, at first glance. Inside, the air was cold, damp. The single room contained a cot, a small propane stove, and a metal cabinet with expired food. Then Rivas noticed something near the back wall, a metal door, partly hidden behind a broken shelf. It led to a root cellar, dark and musty. As officers descended, they called out, "Police! If anyone can hear us, respond." Silence. Flashlights swept across the room and illuminated something. A torn jacket folded neatly on a chair. Inside the pocket, a Cascade Courier patch. Rivas's heart pounded. "Get forensics in here now," she ordered. Back at the station, Elena's parents waited anxiously. "They found something?" her father asked. Rivas nodded, careful. "A cabin. Belongings we believe Elena was there." "Is she alive?" her mother whispered. "We don't know yet, but we're not stopping." Meanwhile, the manhunt for Brian Harwell expanded. His truck, a gray '98 pickup, was found abandoned at a bus depot in Spokane, wiped clean. Security footage showed a man matching Harwell's description boarding a bus to Montana 5 days earlier. The FBI joined the search. Then came a breakthrough. A small-town motel manager in Missoula, Montana, called in a tip. "Guy checked in last night, paid cash, no ID, saw his face on the news." Police rushed to the scene. Room 12, door locked. Officers knocked. No response. They forced entry. The room was empty, but fresh signs of recent use. The bed was unmade, food wrappers on the nightstand. On the bathroom mirror, written in bar soap, were 2 letters. EP. Harwell was still running, but now police had a trail. And back in Seattle, forensics confirmed the jacket in the cabin had Elena's DNA. But still, no sign of her. Rivas stood at the cabin site as the sun set behind the trees. "She was here," she said quietly. "But where is she now?" They hadn't found a body, not yet. And until they did, there was still hope. For days after the cabin search, Detective Jamie Rivas replayed every detail in her mind. The Cascade Courier jacket, the initials EP scrawled in soap on a motel mirror, the trail gone cold. Everything pointed to Harwell keeping Elena alive, at least for some time. But now he was one step ahead, vanished into the back roads of Montana, leaving behind fragments of his twisted plan. At the Seattle station, forensic analysts finally cracked Harwell's burner phone, the one found taped behind the wall in his rental house. Though wiped clean, one unsent text draft remained, buried in system memory. "Can't stay in WA. Go to storage number 2, Montana, off-grid." Rivas stared at the screen. Storage number 2, Montana. "Where?" she asked the tech. "We don't know yet, but the phone pinged near Libby, Montana 2 weeks ago." She pulled a map. Libby was remote, tucked in the Kootenai National Forest. Rugged wooded terrain, perfect to hide something. Cross-referencing land records, they found it. A 5-acre property, registered under a fake LLC, purchased 6 years earlier by a man using Harwell's known alias, John Keller. On satellite view, it showed a small metal structure, possibly a bunker or shed, hidden under tree cover. Rivas stared at the screen. He built something. A federal warrant was secured within hours. At dawn, a multi-agency task force, including FBI agents, moved into position, helicopters scanning the area. They reached the property at 7:12 a.m., deep in the woods, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. The metal structure was partially buried, earth-covered bunker with a single steel door. No signs of life. "Let's breach it," Rivas ordered. The door resisted, but after 15 minutes it gave way. Inside, cold air, darkness. Flashlights cut through the gloom. There were 2 small rooms, one lined with shelves of canned food, water containers, and survival gear. The second room had a cot, a chair, and a thick metal chain bolted to the wall. At the end of the chain, a broken leather cuff. Rivas felt her stomach turn. On the floor in the corner was a small plastic bin. Inside, Cascade Courier ID badge. Elena Price, a torn delivery manifest, a single photograph. Elena alive, sitting on the cot, eyes wide. It was real. She was here, Rivas whispered. But again, no Elena. Then one of the officers called out from the tree line. Footprints, fresh, headed northeast. They were small footprints, barefoot, running. Rivas followed. Half a mile away, in a clearing, they found something. A torn piece of Cascade Courier shirt fabric snagged on a branch. Rivas pick, edit up, heart racing. She's out here. They followed the trail for over an hour, into thicker woods, and then they saw it. A figure, crouched near a fallen log. Small, thin, unmoving. Rivas rushed forward. "Elena?" The woman flinched, turned, eyes sunken, skin pale, but alive. "Elena Price," Rivas gasped. Elena stared, confused, trembling. Then she whispered hoarse, "He left. I ran." Rivas wrapped her jacket around her. "You're safe now." Back at the command post, medics treated Elena. She had been held captive for 2 months, moved between the cabin and the bunker, surviving on scraps, alone for days at a time. He said, "No one was coming," she whispered. Rivas held her hand. He was wrong. Hours later, Brian Harwell was arrested 10 miles east, spotted trying to steal a car from a remote farm. No fight, no words. His face was blank as they cuffed him. But Elena was alive, and after 60 long, terrible days, she was going home. When Elena Price stepped off the medevac transport at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, the sky was heavy with clouds, the kind of gray, endless overcast that only Seattle could hold. She blinked in the light, clutching the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Every movement felt surreal. Her legs ached, her body was weak, but she was standing, alive. At the entrance, her parents waited, holding each other, shaking with emotion. "Mom, Dad," Elena whispered, barely audible. Her mother, Nancy, rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Elena with a force that nearly knocked them both off their feet. "You're home," Nancy sobbed. "You're home." Her father stood silently, tears running down his face. Elena didn't speak. She just held on, the strength of her grip telling them everything they needed to know. Inside the hospital, doctors ran tests, carefully monitoring Elena's condition. Malnourished, dehydrated, but miraculously, no lasting physical injuries. Emotionally, the damage ran deeper. She didn't talk much at first, her nurse told Detective Jamie Rivas. Mostly she just listened, like she wasn't sure this was real. Elena remained under observation for several days, shielded from media and visitors. Her first words to Rivas came late one night. "He always watched me," she said quietly, "even when I thought I was alone." Rivas nodded gently. "You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore." Elena looked up, eyes tired but focused. "Did he say why?" "No. Rivas said honestly. But we found others. Things he kept. You weren't the first. At the King County Jail, Brian Harwell sat in a concrete cell, facing charges of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, assault, and attempted murder. Prosecutors were building a broader case, linking him to at least 3 other disappearances from prior years. His arraignment drew national attention. Elena's parents chose not to attend, but Rivas was there. Harwell stood silently as the judge read the charges. He didn't look at anyone. His attorney entered a plea, not guilty. The judge denied bail. Elena watched the hearing from her hospital bed, silent. Her father turned off the TV. "You don't have to watch that." "I need to see him," she replied, "to remember what he took." Back at Cascade Courier, a small crowd gathered the next day. Co-workers, friends, volunteers, all there to welcome Elena home. Her bike, retrieved by police, had been restored and cleaned, placed carefully near the front office. Elena stepped inside, slowly. The familiar smell of coffee and rubber tires hit her all at once. Mark Dunleavy, her supervisor, approached, voice shaking. "You don't have to come back, Elena, but this place is always yours." She smiled faintly. "I'm not ready yet, but someday." She ran her hand along the handlebars of her bike. It felt like a lifetime ago. The next morning, a small press conference was held. Elena didn't attend but released a short statement. "Thank you to everyone who searched. D for me, who never gave up. I'm alive because of you. I'm not ready to speak about what happened, but I survived, and I will heal." As weeks passed, Elena began the slow work of reclaiming her life. Therapy sessions, quiet walks, time with her parents. No cameras, no interviews. She stayed near home, but sometimes rode her bike in quiet neighborhoods. Just short distances, just to remember what freedom felt like. Meanwhile, the case against Harwell grew stronger. His DNA matched evidence in 2 cold cases, and multiple items from the storage unit were linked to missing women across Washington. Prosecutors prepared for trial. Elena knew she'd be called to testify. One evening, as she sat on her porch, staring at the Seattle skyline, she said softly, "He tried to make me disappear." Her mother sat beside her. "But he failed." Elena nodded. "I'm still here." The trial of Brian Harwell began on a crisp October morning in the King County Superior Court. The city was quiet, unusually still, as if waiting for something to break. Inside the courtroom, Elena Price sat with her parents just a few rows from the front, clutching a small notebook in her lap. She had written down the things she wanted to say, not just for the jury, but for herself. Her name was first on the witness list. She had not seen Harwell since the day she escaped. When the judge entered, the room stood. At the defense table, Brian Harwell sat in a dark suit, emotionless, eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't look at Elena. She didn't look away. The charges read aloud were staggering: kidnapping in the 1st degree, unlawful imprisonment, aggravated assault, possession of illegal surveillance equipment, suspected involvement in 2 prior missing persons cases. The prosecution opened with quiet strength. Brian Harwell used a position of trust, an ordinary delivery address, to lure a young woman into a trap. But this time, the victim survived. She will tell you her story. When Elena took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She gripped the railing tightly. "I remember it was cloud. I'll tell you tonight," she began, her voice steady. "I had one last package to deliver. West Seattle. It was supposed to be routine." She described arriving at the property, the quiet house, the open gate, how Harwell met her at the door. "He was friendly. Too friendly." Her voice cracked slightly. "He offered me water. I stepped inside for just a second. That's when it happened." The room remained frozen. "He had it all planned. He took my bag, smashed my phone. I didn't know where we were going." She paused, then met Harwell's eyes, just once. "I thought I was going to die." Her mother cried quietly in the front row. Elena continued, describing weeks in the cabin, then the bunker, the silence, and her final escape into the woods. On cross-examination, Harwell's defense suggested she was confused, traumatized, unable to recall events clearly. Elena's response was calm. "I lived every second. I remember everything. Next came the evidence. Photos of the shed, bunker, the chained cuff, and the courier bag. The prosecution displayed surveillance images from Harwell's own setup, showing Elena restrained, dated within days of her disappearance. The jury's reaction was visceral. Then came the survivor files. Detective Jamie Rivas testified about the items found in storage: ID cards, women's belongings, even recorded audio files on old devices. Not all names were known, some would never be. Elena listened, her hands clenched. He had done this before. She wasn't his first. When the prosecution rested, Harwell declined to testify. His attorney argued mental instability, past trauma, and emotional detachment, but the jury was unmoved. On the final day, the prosecutor turned to the jury. Elena Price was supposed to vanish forever. He took everything from her, but she refused to be erased. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty, on all counts. Elena's eyes closed briefly, relief, trembling, but no tears. In her victim statement, Elena stood in court one last time. "You thought you'd break me," she said to Harwell, voice steady. "You didn't. You thought no one would care. You were wrong. I survived, and now everyone knows what you did." Harwell was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He didn't look at her. She didn't need him to. Outside, reporters waited. Elena stood beside Detective Rivas and her parents. "I'm not a victim," she said. "I'm someone who came home." The city of Seattle had moved on, or at least it seemed to. New stories filled the local news cycle, new tragedies, new names. But for those who knew Elena, those who had searched for her, feared the worst, and held on to hope, her story was something quietly remarkable. She was not supposed to be here, but she was. At home, Elena found herself relearning ordinary life. Small things: the sound of birds in the morning, the way sunlight pooled on her kitchen floor, the feeling of water on her hands, became anchors. There were days she didn't leave the house, days when sleep came easily, and others when it didn't come at all. Nightmares still visited her, and sometimes she woke up gasping, the sensation of cold walls and heavy chains returning for just a moment. But each time she reminded herself that place was gone. He was gone. Her parents remained close, supporting her quietly. They didn't ask questions she couldn't answer. Her mother, Nancy, often cooked Elena's favorite meals, leaving leftovers in the fridge with notes. Her father, Mark, repaired her bike without being asked. Small acts of love that needed no explanation. They knew she needed time and space. Elena started therapy. At first reluctantly, then gradually with more openness. Talking about what happened hurt, but holding it in had begun to hurt more. One afternoon in early spring, Elena rode her bike down a quiet residential street in Fremont, past a coffee shop where she had often stopped during courier shifts. She locked her bike and went inside. The barista, a young man with glasses, paused. "Hey, I know you," he said carefully. "It's really good to see you." Elena nodded, her voice soft but certain. "It's good to be seen." At home, in a small wooden box on her bookshelf, Elena kept the items returned to her after the trial. Her Cascade Courier ID badge, slightly scuffed. The delivery scanner, screen still cracked. And the padded envelope, the undelivered package, still sealed. She had considered throwing it away, or burning it, but instead she kept it. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a symbol of survival, that the delivery was never made, but she had come back instead. Cascade Courier offered her a desk job, away from deliveries. Elena declined, politely. "I'm not ready. Maybe someday." But she visited the office once a month just to say hello. Her bike, cleaned and restored, was stored safely in the back room. They offered to gift it to her. She smiled. "Keep it for now. It belongs here." As time passed, Elena returned to school part-time, taking classes in writing and psychology. Her therapist suggested journaling, so she began writing daily. Small entries, fragments of thought, memories, hopes. One entry read, "He tried to make me disappear, but I'm still here. The city is still mine. The streets are still mine. I will not vanish." In July, on the one-year anniversary of her escape, Elena hosted a small gathering at the Ballard Community Center. No press, no fanfare, just the people who had searched for her, prayed for her, and worked tirelessly to bring her home. Detective Jamie Rivas was there, standing quietly in the back. Elena approached her, offering a quiet hug. "You saved me," she said. "No," Rivas replied. "You saved yourself. We just helped you find the way back." That night, Elena walked along the waterfront, watching boats drift by under the Seattle ski line, glowing in the summer dusk. She sat on a bench and opened a letter, one she had written months ago but never sent. It was addressed to myself, the day I came home. Inside, she had written, "You will be scared, you will be angry, but you will not be broken. You will love again, laugh again, and trust again. Not because of what happened, but in spite of it." She folded the letter, tucked it back into her journal, and smiled. Early the next morning, Elena rode her bike across the Aurora Bridge, stopping midway to watch the water far below. She stood there a long time, breathing in the city air, feeling the cool breeze on her skin. The fear was still there, smaller now, quieter, but she had learned something. Fear couldn't keep her from living. Behind her was everything she had lost. Ahead of her was everything she still had to find. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and began to pedal forward, into the morning, into the world, and into whatever came next. In the end, Elena Price's story wasn't defined by the 2 months she was missing, nor by the man who tried to erase her from the world. It was defined by something far more powerful: her will to survive, her refusal to disappear, and the community that never stopped looking. For 60 days, Elena lived in darkness, far from the streets she once traveled so freely. She was silenced, hidden, and isolated, but not broken. When the moment came, she ran. She pushed through fear, cold, and exhaustion to find the world again. That choice, that courage, brought her home. Her parents, who endured every parent's worst nightmare, never gave up hope. The friends and co-workers who searched alleys, taped flyers, and held candlelight vigils. They didn't know if they'd ever see her again, but they showed up anyway. And detectives like Jamie Rivas, who refused to close the case or settle for unknowns, followed every thread until the truth was found. Elena will live with what happened to her for the rest of her life. Healing is not a straight line. Some days are still hard, but she aches up each morning in her own bed, in her own home, on her own terms. And that matters. That's what was taken from her, and that's what she reclaimed. There is no way to undo the time that was lost, but Elena's story is a reminder that survival itself is a kind of justice, that living well is a form of strength, and that not all disappearances end in silence. Her life was interrupted, but it wasn't ended. And though she never wanted to become a symbol, Elena Price stands as one. For every person who's been overlooked, doubted, or nearly forgotten, and for every soul who made it home, scarred maybe, but still standing. Some stories end in tragedy. This one didn't, because one young woman kept going and refused to let fear write her final chapter.